at another video, and this one is on a Unit 0, or what teachers sometimes call a foundational unit. Now, this is unit that precedes the 1200 date that begins the course. In other words, this content will not be assessed on the AP test, yet it's important, and I like to use it for two reasons. First of all, I like to set some context for what's about to happen in 1200, and also I use this as a bench to work out the skills for the first time for students. And I have 3 lessons to share with you. In the first lesson, I'm not going to go into that much because, as you see here, I have the complete directions for you, and you can administer this in your class very easily. It's on the River Valley civilization, and really can be applied to any of the civilizations. And what you first do is you project this, and you have students look at these bricks and read that attribution line that says that the bricks found at Lothal were exactly the same size as the ones found at Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa. And then you project this map and you let them see how far apart these cities actually are. And we want them to build an inference or come up with an inference from that content. And once you work through this with the students, I like to nudge them here to get to understand that the fact that the bricks are the same size seems to imply that they were under a single government. Perhaps they have building codes, for example. And then I might look down here to evidence number 4, that the cities reflect urban planning. All of them are laid out with major roads running north and south. And what we want to do here is get them to corroborate evidence. To look at this first one that seems to imply that there is a single government and link it with this one that supports that. It makes it a more robust type of claim. And once you model that, you get them in the groups and you have them go through this and write whatever inference they can come up with here in their groups in this graphic organizer. And then here we see, this is the question I would have asked them: what might archaeologists conclude about these cities based on the bricks discovered? And then explain how or why the bricks found support this assertion above. And the whole point here is to get them to come up with an argument that corroborates evidence. And then I model a basic argument for them. This is different from the one I'm going to have them do, but I'll have them take an assertion or a historical claim that the cities were able to produce large surpluses of agriculture, and the evidence is that and they'll see this in that list of archaeological evidence, that they found a bead factory and they unearthed a large number of toys. And here's the analysis. Well, what does that mean? It seems to imply that they had a huge surplus of agriculture, because if they can give up labor to make toys and beads, then they probably have the food situation taken care of. And then here's a model for you of what they should come up with. And here is the cheat sheet for you, by the way, that shows you some things that they should get from this. So that's an important thing for getting them to, first of all, make claims and then support them with corroborating evidence, and then also make an argument. And teachers usually ask me at summer institutes, well, where do you introduce the DBQ? Actually, I introduce it right here. I haven't called it that yet. I don't like to drop these names at the beginning of the class, but they are already working on the skills that they need to be successful in the class. And then lastly, I have them in groups come up with an argument about why this civilization collapsed. And you'll get some really good answers from your students. Now, the next one is on classical state building. And again, I have some directions for you. Feel free to use this in your class. And this is a series of documents that your students are going to look at. The first document talks about how the Chinese use marriages or matrimonial alliances to build the peace with the nomads on their border. And then they also have to take this map and shade the area here that is going to be the most vulnerable for them. So they've gleaned from this secondary source, this historical source, that they use marriages to make peace with the Xiongnu. And then on the worksheet that you'll have them do, after they shade it, they're going to read this, a primary source. This is a poem. And look at what this woman is saying, that she was married off far away, that her tent is round and her fur blanket is my wall, meat is my food, yogurt is my drink, and she longs to be home again. Now, what I want them to do is take that secondary source that describes those matrimonial or marriage alliances and then contextualize this poem. This is pretty easy for them, and again, you might want to walk them through this. They'll be able to understand that, well, this lady Li Junun has been married off to make peace. And then after doing that, they're going to identify a technique of imperial administration employed by the Chinese. And what they need to do here is write a complete sentence that simply names marriage alliances. And then they're going to have to explain how this technique aided the Han in the governing of their empire. And again, you're helping them a great deal at this point. And you're going to want to explain to them that in these nomadic, tribal bloodline civilizations and China with its Confucian focus on families, that when there's a marriage, it brings together families and makes them less likely to war. And notice I've underlined the verb identify and the verb explain because these are the operative verbs in the short answer questions or the SAQs that students will have to do on the AP test. So again, we're training them for the skills they have to do for the SAQ, but they don't know that yet. I don't like to even drop these names for a while in the class. So there are a lot of other interesting documents for them to look at here about how quick they are. And this one's particularly interesting because it's a Chinese defector who's gone to the enemy. And these are his orders. And I asked them in the questions here to talk about the tone here. What does this suggest about the power relation between the Han and the Xiongnu? And of course, it is that the Han are at the lower end of this power differential, and the Xiongnu are now dictating the terms of these agreements. You also see this argument here, this question here, based on document 5, what might a historian conclude about a problem common to both the Roman and the Chinese empires? Well, look at document number 5 here. It's an image. This is the Hadrian's Wall, built on the northern border between England and close to England and Scotland today. And what I expect students to do with this question is to bring in some outside information. Okay, they should know about the Great Wall of China. And again, you might need to nudge them, but what is the Great Wall of China and the fact that the Chinese or the Romans have also built a wall tell us about the empire? And there are several possible answers. They've extended their borders so vastly that they need to protect them, or they find security a really big issue. So this is comprised of 7 documents that you'll have your student read. And again, I have the directions here, and I also have some help for you to walk you through the documents and give you a little bit of background about them. And maybe, this is again the teacher cheat sheet to help you get through this. So we're going to expect the students to come up with arguments once again. This is all about taking evidence and making it into arguments. And again, what they're doing here is they're learning to build the DBQ, or the document-based question. I recommend you incorporate historical documents as often as you can into your class. Now this continues that. This is about the decline of classical civilizations, and this one's really good. You notice that this is a primary source, and they're complaining that the grain produced on the border can't feed the troops. A wall doesn't work if you don't have troops to man it, and so they need lots of grain, and they're having to commission others to supply that grain. And then they come to this document, and they need to be able to interpret the data here. The yellow circles are population losses, and the bigger the circle, the more population has been lost. And the purple circles are population increases. And you have all kinds of context you can bring into here. The Grand Canal that connects the Yellow River down here to the Yangtze River. But up here you have a problem. And I would relate them back to the map in the previous lesson where they shaded that area that is that major issue, or that security issue for the Chinese, because this is where the Xiongnu are coming in. And notice the population losses, and that means there's no one to make the grain. And if you can't do that, you can't secure your borders. So we're getting them to corroborate a great deal of evidence here. Now, the question you might ask your students is, well, why is there such a population loss up here in the Yellow River Basin? And here you bring them to this photograph, which I love about, it's an archaeological dig currently going on in China. This is the Yellow River Basin. Look at the flood deposits here. They experience an enormous amount of flooding. Of course, that has been taken care of in modern history with the building of the Great Dam there. But this river flooded all the time. So I would expect students to connect this flooding with the population loss and the inability to produce grain the soldiers needed. And then you could corroborate this map here. Now you have the Huns coming in. Here's the relevant movement of the Huns. Of course, they also affect the Romans. But what are they going to do about the Huns coming in? They can't stop it. The wall doesn't work without the soldiers. So there's a lot of great things here to deal with in this lesson. And we also have some quotations from the Romans. This is a very interesting quotation about the Romans. And what I'm going to have you do is compose some of your own questions on this and post them in the forum for this lesson. But here you have 3 lessons, and if you have time, incorporate them. If you want to do more, of course, and I do more. This isn't all I do. I mean, I can't resist talking about the Romans and the Greeks and so forth, but this is a great skeleton. If you don't have a lot of time to deal with these foundational topics, that will help build context for the class. So I will post and link these lessons to you. They might, some of them have my name in the bottom. I don't care if you cut my name off and make it your own. I really don't care. But these are some good lessons that I'm giving you to help your students build necessary skills that they're going to need for this course. So thank you very much, and I'll see you with the next video.